When I finally retired from the office, people congratulated me, clapped for me, and even brought me flowers, but inside, I was already feeling the weight of a silence I knew was waiting for me at home. The office had not just been a workplace for me. It had been a world of laughter, whispers, and stolen glances. It was the place where I met girls, young women full of life and energy, who filled my days with more than just paperwork and deadlines. Behind the seriousness of meetings and files, there had always been another rhythm to my life. The rhythm of romance, of secret touches, and kisses hidden between office doors. I had always been careful. No one ever suspected much. But I knew which of the girls leaned toward me, who lingered a second longer when our hands brushed while passing papers, who looked at me with softness in her eyes when she thought no one else was watching. Those moments had kept me alive. Even as I grew older, even when wrinkles began forming at the corners of my eyes, I was still someone they admired, someone they wanted to be close to. The office gave me chances, opportunities, and above all, companionship. I never felt truly alone there. But retirement stripped all that away. The first week at home, I kept waking up at the same time as I did for work. My body was used to it, but when I sat on the bed, I realized there was no rush anymore. No one waiting for me, no papers, no meetings. Just a quiet house, walls that echoed, and a long day ahead of me. At first, I told myself it would be peaceful, that I deserved rest after decades of work. But soon, that peace turned into a strange emptiness that gnawed at me. I missed the laughter of girls in the office corridors. I missed the way their perfume lingered after they passed by. I missed the secret romance, the thrill of closing my office door and feeling someone's lips on mine, the gentle kisses stolen between tasks, the soft warmth of their arms around me. Those memories began to replay in my mind at night, uninvited but welcome, like old films I couldn't stop watching. Some nights I would lie on my bed and imagine the taste of those kisses again. I would remember how, after a stressful meeting, one of the younger women would quietly step into my cabin, close the door behind her, and lean over me with a smile. Those tender moments of affection had made me feel young again, even as the years went by. Now, without them, the nights felt unbearably cold. I would wrap myself in my blanket and still feel a void inside, as if no amount of warmth could reach me. Days stretched endlessly. I tried reading books, watching television, even walking in the park. But every place I went, I felt out of place. Couples holding hands made my chest ache. Women chatting together reminded me of what I had lost. I wondered if anyone else my age felt this way. Longing not just for company, but for romance, for touch, for the sweetness of lips meeting lips after years of knowing what it felt like. I had always been bold in the office, but at home, I became a shadow of myself. Sometimes, I would stand in front of the mirror, tracing the lines on my face, whispering to my reflection, "Will no one ever kiss me again?" My eyes would blur with tears at the thought. It wasn't just the kiss itself I missed, it was the closeness, the care, the assurance that someone desired me, someone chose me. The silence of my home became almost unbearable. I could hear the ticking of the clock too loudly, the creak of furniture when I shifted, the distant sounds of other families living their lives outside my window. My life, however, had shrunk to a chair, a bed, and the restless thoughts in my heart. I started thinking of the girls I had known in the past. There was one who had been so gentle, who used to bring me coffee and leave a small smile on her lips that was meant only for me. Another one had been fiery and bold, sneaking into my office when she knew everyone had left, pulling me into kisses so deep I forgot about everything else. Where were they now? Married, perhaps, with children, busy in their own worlds. Did they ever think of me the way I thought of them? Did they remember my touch the way I remembered theirs? It hurt sometimes to imagine that maybe I was just a fleeting moment in their youth, while for me, those moments had been the very air I breathed. I was left behind, clutching to memories, while they moved on. Retirement was supposed to mean rest and freedom, but for me, it became a prison of loneliness. The more days passed, the more I craved affection. Not just conversation, not just companionship, but the real, physical closeness of another woman who could understand my heart. I wanted to feel lips on mine again, hands tracing my shoulders, a body pressing close to mine in warmth and love. I began to wonder if perhaps that part of my life was over forever. Maybe at 50, love and romance no longer came knocking at your door. Maybe the world thought people like me should sit quietly and fade away. But my heart refused to accept it. Every night, when I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, I whispered to myself, "No, it cannot be over. Not yet. I still have love to give. I still want to be kissed, to be held, to be wanted." And deep inside, I held on to a quiet hope, though I didn't know from where or from whom it would come. My maid had been with me for several years. She was steady, reliable, the kind of woman who slipped into the background of daily life but somehow managed to hold everything together. She wasn't flashy or loud. She wore simple clothes, tied her hair neatly, and spoke little unless spoken to. To most, she would have seemed ordinary, but to me, there was always something in her that felt quietly extraordinary. Perhaps it was the way she carried herself, with calm dignity despite the endless chores. Or maybe it was the loneliness I sometimes caught in her eyes when she thought no one was watching. She would scrub the floor with steady rhythm, wipe the furniture with gentle care, and every so often pause, lost in thought, her gaze drifting to nothing in particular. I began to notice her more after retirement, when I suddenly had all the time in the world to sit and observe. At first, I told myself it was nothing, that I was simply too starved for company and was reading too much into little things. But the longer I watched her, the more I felt something deeper stirring beneath her quiet surface. There were moments when our eyes met unexpectedly, and she looked away a little too quickly, as though hiding something. There were times when she lingered longer in the room than necessary, rearranging objects that were already in order. One afternoon, as she handed me a glass of water, her fingers brushed mine. It was only for a second, but the touch sent a shiver through me. Her hand was warm, soft, and instead of pulling back quickly, she froze, just for a heartbeat, before withdrawing. I looked up, and our eyes locked. Something flickered there, something I couldn't quite name but felt in my bones. My heart raced like it hadn't in years. That night, lying in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about that moment. Her hand, her eyes, the silence between us. Was I imagining it? Was I so desperate for affection that I was inventing desires in her that weren't there? The uncertainty both thrilled and tormented me. The next day, I decided to test the waters. I found excuses to talk to her more, to be in the same room when she worked. I noticed the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when nervous, how her cheeks grew slightly pink if our conversation lingered too long. And though she tried to keep her composure, her eyes betrayed her, softening whenever they fell on me, as if she carried unspoken words in her chest. Finally, one evening, when the sun had dipped low and shadows stretched long across the room, I gathered the courage to ask. She was dusting the shelf, her back turned to me. My voice came out softer than I expected, almost trembling. "Can I ask you something personal?" She paused, lowered the cloth, and turned to face me. "Of course, madam." The word madam always felt too formal, too distant, but I let it pass. I drew in a breath. "Have you ever loved a woman?" For a moment she looked stunned, as if I had reached into a locked chest inside her heart and pulled something out she had long buried. Her lips parted but no words came. She looked down at her hands, fiddling with the edge of the cloth, before whispering, "Why do you ask?" "Because," I said, trying to steady my voice, "sometimes I see something in your eyes. Something I recognize. Something I used to carry too." She was silent, but her eyes glistened when she finally looked at me. Then, in a voice so soft I had to lean forward to catch it, she confessed, "It has been 20 years since I kissed a woman." The words hung heavy between us, filling the room with electricity. My breath caught in my throat. She continued, almost as if releasing a weight she had carried far too long. "When I was young, there was someone," she said, her eyes distant, caught in memory. "We were everything to each other. But life, family, society, it all came between us. She married, moved away, and I was left behind. Since then, I've never had that chance again. I buried that part of me." I thought it was gone forever. Her voice cracked, and she turned away, embarrassed by her own vulnerability. My heart ached at her words. 20 years. 2 whole decades of silence, of longing, of never feeling the softness of another woman's lips. I wanted to reach out, to hold her, to tell her she wasn't alone. Instead, I stepped closer, my voice barely more than a whisper. Do you miss it? The tenderness. She closed her eyes, nodding, a single tear slipping down her cheek. Every day, she admitted. But I thought no one would ever ask me again. I thought no one would ever want me like that again. In that moment, I couldn't hold back the surge of emotion inside me. I touched her hand gently, and she didn't pull away. Our fingers intertwined slowly, naturally, as though they had been waiting years for this connection. The air between us grew thick with unspoken feelings. My heart pounded as I looked into her eyes that now brimmed with a mixture of fear, hope, and something undeniably tender. I want you to know, I said softly, you're not alone in this. I've been waiting too. Maybe not 20 years, but since the day I retired, I've felt empty, starved of love. And now I see you, and I feel something again. Her lips trembled, and she whispered, Do you really mean that? I squeezed her hand gently. Every word. For the first time she smiled, not the polite smile she gave while working, but a real smile, fragile and glowing, like a flower opening after years of drought. That night, long after she left for her home, I lay in bed unable to sleep. My body still remembered the warmth of her hand in mine. My mind replayed her words over and over. 20 years since I kissed a woman. And my heart whispered a single thought. Perhaps those years of loneliness, for both of us, were about to end. The evening was unusually quiet, even for my lonely house. The air felt heavy, as though waiting for something to happen. The sun had set, leaving the rooms wrapped in a warm, amber glow from the single lamp that lit the living room. She had stayed a little longer that day, helping me with some old papers I wanted to sort. I could tell she wasn't in a hurry to leave, and for once, I didn't ask her to. When we finally sat down, the room around us was silent except for the faint ticking of the clock. I could hear her breathing, steady but slightly uneven, as if she too felt the strange tension lingering in the air. My hands trembled a little as I reached for my cup of tea, but I barely drank. My mind wasn't on tea, it was on her, on the words she had spoken to me the other day. 20 years since I kissed a woman. The thought hadn't left me since. I looked at her sitting there, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes lowered. She looked so composed, but I could sense the nervous energy radiating from her. I wanted to reach across the small space between us, to take her hand again, to tell her she didn't need to hide anymore. But something held me back. Fear, hesitation, the weight of the unknown. Finally, I broke the silence. You know, I began softly, I keep thinking about what you told me. About how long it has been. Her head lifted slightly, her eyes meeting mine with a mix of curiosity and caution. You remember that? How could I forget? I whispered, leaning a little closer. It was the most honest thing anyone has ever told me. Her lips trembled faintly, and I could see her fingers tighten together in her lap. I wanted to ease her, to let her know that she was safe here with me. I moved a little closer, my knees brushing against hers. Do you still feel that emptiness? I asked. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. Yes. Every day. Sometimes I wonder if my heart has forgotten what it feels like. Something in me broke at those words. I reached out, gently covering her hand with mine. Her skin was warm, trembling just like mine. She looked down at our joined hands, then back into my eyes. For a moment, we said nothing, just sat in the thick silence of anticipation. I haven't forgotten, I told her, my voice shaking. Not the way it feels. Not what it means. And if you'll let me, I'd like to remind you. Her eyes widened, glistening with unshed tears, but she didn't pull back. Instead, she whispered, Are you sure? After all these years. I leaned closer, so close I could feel her breath on my face. Yes. I've never been more sure. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. The ticking of the clock faded, the glow of the lamp blurred, and it was just us, two women sitting on the edge of something we both had been longing for. Then, slowly, I lifted my hand and touched her cheek. Her skin was soft, warmer than I imagined, and she closed her eyes at the touch, leaning into it. I tilted my face closer, hesitating only a fraction of a second before our lips finally met. It was not rushed, not hungry. It was slow, careful, trembling with the weight of years lost and emotions suppressed. Her lips were gentle, almost unsure, but the moment they touched mine, something inside me ignited. My chest ached, my whole body trembled, and I felt tears prick my eyes. She let out a soft gasp, as though she couldn't believe this was really happening. Her hand moved up to clutch mine, holding on to me as if she was afraid I would vanish. I deepened the kiss slightly, tasting the sweetness of rediscovery, and she responded with a delicate pressure, her lips moving against mine in rhythm. It was tender, emotional, more than just a kiss. It was a return, a rebirth, a moment that told us we had both been waiting for this, even if we hadn't admitted it until now. When we finally pulled back, her eyes were wet with tears, and I realized mine were too. She laughed softly, the sound breaking through the heaviness, and wiped her cheek with the back of her hand. "I can't believe this," she whispered. "After 20 years. I thought I would never feel this again." I smiled, brushing her hair back from her face. "And I thought my time for this was over. But here we are." She leaned into me then, resting her forehead against mine. We sat like that for a while, our breaths mingling, our hands entwined, the glow of the lamp casting us in a cocoon of warmth. And then she kissed me again, this time with a little more certainty, a little more courage. I kissed her back, my heart racing, my body alive in a way it hadn't been in years. We laughed in between kisses, shy but joyful, like teenagers discovering love for the first time. And then there were moments when we didn't laugh at all, when the weight of our emotions pressed tears from our eyes, and we held each other as if afraid to let go. The house around us seemed to fade into nothingness. Time lost meaning. All I knew was the softness of her lips, the way her hands clutched at my shoulders, the warmth of her body so close to mine. Every kiss felt like stitching together the torn pieces of my heart. Every embrace felt like reclaiming the years that loneliness had stolen from me. We stayed like that for what felt like hours, talking little, kissing often, holding each other with the desperate tenderness of two souls who had been starved for too long. And as I lay against her, my head resting on her shoulder, her arms wrapped tightly around me, I realized something with a clarity that took my breath away. We were both 50, our hair streaked with silver, our faces marked by time. But in that moment, breathless, trembling, our lips still tingling from the sweetness of the kiss, I felt young again. I felt 20. After that night, nothing between us was the same. The walls of silence that had stood between us for years crumbled in an instant, and in their place grew a closeness that felt as natural as breathing. She no longer rushed to finish her work and leave. Instead, she lingered, often sitting with me once her chores were done, sipping tea and talking softly as the night grew late. It didn't take long before she began sleeping over. At first, it was unplanned. One evening she finished late, the buses had stopped running, and I told her gently, "Stay here tonight. It's safer." She hesitated, but finally agreed. That night, I gave her a spare nightgown and showed her to the guest room. But neither of us slept much. The house felt alive with the memory of our kiss, with the anticipation of what might come next. By the second night, she didn't go into the guest room. She came into mine. The first time we shared a bed, it was awkward only for a moment. We lay side by side, the silence stretching between us, until I reached for her hand beneath the covers. She laced her fingers through mine, and with that single touch, everything fell into place. She turned toward me, and I turned toward her, and we kissed, slowly, deeply, as though sealing a promise. When we finally fell asleep, her arms were around me, her breath soft against my hair. I hadn't slept so peacefully in years. From then on, she never left at night. She brought a few of her belongings over quietly, one small bag at a time, until her presence in my home became permanent. My once empty house filled with the rhythm of life again, her laughter, her humming as she cooked, her soft footsteps moving from room to room. Our days began to follow a new pattern, one that made me feel like I had been given a second chance at living. In the mornings, we cooked breakfast together. She would chop vegetables while I brewed tea, and sometimes we would brush past each other in the small kitchen, smiling at the touch of our shoulders. She laughed more now, and when she laughed, I couldn't help but join her. We shared stories. She told me about her youth, about the woman she had once loved so fiercely and lost. I told her about my office days, the stolen kisses behind closed doors, the thrill of secrecy. There was no jealousy in our confessions, only understanding. Our pasts had shaped us, but our present belonged to each other. In the afternoons, she often insisted on doing the heavier chores, but I found myself helping her anyway. Sometimes, as she washed dishes, I would come up behind her and wrap my arms around her waist, resting my chin on her shoulder. She would giggle softly, swat me with the towel, then lean back into me with a sigh of contentment. The nights, though. Oh, the nights were where our love bloomed fully. We would lie together on my bed, kissing for hours, as though making up for all the years of deprivation. Her lips explored mine with tenderness, never rushed, never harsh, always as if she wanted to savor me. There were nights when we kissed until our lips were swollen, holding each other so tightly we could barely tell where one of us ended and the other began. One evening, as we lay side by side, I took her hands in mine. They were rough from years of housework, the skin dry, the fingers worn. I lifted them to my lips and kissed them, one by one, before gently massaging her palms. She closed her eyes, her whole body relaxing into the bed. "No one has ever done this for me," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You deserve it," I said, pressing another kiss to her knuckles. "These hands have worked so hard. Let me care for them." She turned to me then, tears shimmering in her eyes. She cupped my face with those very hands and kissed my forehead softly. "And you," she murmured, "deserve to be loved every single day." That moment stayed with me. It wasn't just about the kisses, or the touch, it was about the care. We had found in each other not just passion but companionship, tenderness, and the kind of love that asked for nothing but gave everything. Sometimes, late at night, she would rest her head on my chest, listening to the rhythm of my heartbeat. "It calms me," she would say, her voice muffled against me. I would stroke her hair and hold her close, whispering, "Then listen all night, my love. My heart beats only for you now." Our intimacy deepened, not in fiery passion but in the gentle way we cherished each other. We rediscovered the beauty of small things, the way her hand found mine under the blanket, the way she kissed my eyelids when I was tired, the way I smoothed her hair after a long day. We made a habit of lying awake long after midnight, talking in whispers, sharing secrets we had never dared tell anyone else. It amazed me how quickly the emptiness of my house was replaced by warmth. I no longer dreaded the long hours of the day. Instead, I looked forward to them, waking up beside her, cooking together, stealing kisses in the kitchen, and falling asleep in her arms. Life had become fuller, richer, even though nothing in the outside world had changed. Sometimes, I would catch her looking at me with a softness that made my chest ache. "What are you thinking?" I would ask. "That I never imagined this," she would reply, brushing her fingers along my cheek. "I thought my life was over in that way. And now, here you are, giving it back to me." I would kiss her then, slow and lingering, and whisper, "You've given it back to me too." Love, I realized, was not about age or timing. It wasn't about youth or perfection. It was about finding someone who saw you, truly saw you, and cared for you, flaws and all. We had both spent years thinking our time had passed, that no one would hold us, kiss us, or love us again. But in each other, we found proof that it was never too late. And every night, as we kissed beneath the quiet hum of the ceiling fan, her arms wrapped tightly around me, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Not just desire, not just passion, but the deep, unshakable comfort of knowing I was no longer alone. The weeks rolled into months, and our bond grew deeper with every shared laugh, every touch, and every kiss stolen in the quiet corners of my home. But with every moment of happiness, a shadow followed me. The shadow of fear. At night, when she slept soundly with her head resting on my chest, I would stare at the ceiling and wonder, what if the world found out? People could be cruel. They had always been cruel. When I was younger, my secrets had to be hidden between office doors and after-work encounters. And now, at 50, I finally had someone who gave me warmth again. Yet fear crept in, whispering doubts. One evening, as she folded clothes beside me, I noticed the worry etched across her face. "What's wrong?" I asked softly, reaching out to brush a strand of hair from her cheek. She hesitated, her hands stilling over the laundry. "I was just thinking. If people ever knew about us, what would they say? I work in people's homes. What if someone talks? What if I lose everything?" Her voice cracked on that last word, and my heart tightened. I cupped her hands gently, pulling her closer. "Listen to me," I said, my voice firm but tender. "We are not doing anything wrong. Love isn't wrong. We've both spent so much of our lives hiding, starving for affection. Don't we deserve happiness now?" Tears welled up in her eyes, but she smiled weakly. "It's just, no one ever told me it was okay to love a woman. For years, I buried that part of me. And now, with you, it's all coming back." I kissed her trembling fingers, letting them rest against my lips. "Then let it come back. Let it live again. Don't bury it anymore." She leaned into me, her forehead pressing against mine, and for a long moment, we just breathed together, the silence filled with unspoken promises. But still, the fears lingered in small ways. She often tried to leave at night, gathering her bag after dinner, insisting she had to go. And each time, I felt the sting of emptiness rush in before the door even closed. One rainy evening, I finally couldn't take it anymore. She stood by the doorway with her dupatta draped over her shoulders, hesitant, her eyes torn between leaving and staying. "Why do you always try to go?" I asked, my voice softer than the rain tapping against the windows. She lowered her gaze. "Because it doesn't feel like I belong here. This is your home, not mine. I'm just your maid." Her words struck deep, and I walked over to her, lifting her chin so she would meet my eyes. "Don't ever say that again," I whispered. "You are not just my maid. You're the woman I love. Do you understand?" Her lips parted in surprise, and I felt her body tremble beneath my touch. "But," she began, but I cut her off, my voice breaking with the truth I had held back too long. "I don't want you to go home anymore," I said, tears rising in my eyes. "This is your home now. Stay with me, not just for tonight, but for every night. I can't bear to watch you walk away anymore." For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then her tears spilled over, and she threw her arms around me, burying her face in my shoulder. I held her tightly, my own tears mingling with the scent of rain in her hair. "Yes," she whispered, her voice shaking but sure. "Yes, I'll stay. I'll stay with you." I kissed the crown of her head again and again, until she finally looked up at me, her cheeks wet but glowing. Our lips met in a kiss that was not hurried or desperate, but full of relief, love, and acceptance. It was as if, in that moment, we both finally gave ourselves permission to live freely. We spent that night not just as lovers, but as partners. We lay in bed, holding hands, whispering dreams of a life shared together. No matter what the world thought, we had chosen each other. And as her fingers traced gentle circles over my palm, I realized something. Love at 50 was not a leftover, not a fading ember. It was just as real, just as valid, just as powerful as the love we once knew in our 20s. Only this time, it was deeper, wiser, and it was ours. Every night after she stayed, our home seemed to transform into something sacred. The silence that once haunted these walls was now filled with the sound of our laughter, our whispers, and the tender rhythm of two hearts finding each other after decades of longing. We would slip under the sheets together, the weight of the day melting away as her hand found mine. Sometimes, before sleep, she would turn to me with that shy smile, the same one that first made me notice her, and ask, "Do you ever regret this? Us?" I always answered with a kiss, slow and reassuring, pressing my lips against hers until she knew the truth. I could never regret her. Our kisses were no longer hesitant. They flowed naturally, as if our lips had always been waiting for one another. Sometimes we laughed between them, sometimes we cried, but always we held on tight. The night stretched long, filled with kisses that wandered from cheeks to neck, to hands, to anywhere my lips could reach. Each kiss carried a promise that neither of us would be alone again. There was one night I remember especially. The lights were dim, the air warm, and she lay curled against me, her fingers tracing circles on my chest. Her touch was soft, almost reverent, as if she was memorizing me. "You make me feel young again," she whispered. I smiled, brushing my fingers through her hair. "You make me feel alive again." We kissed, not with the urgency of youth, but with the depth of women who had waited half a lifetime for this tenderness. The world outside ceased to exist. No neighbors, no judgment, no whispers of society. Just us. Two women, 50 years old, holding each other as if time itself had bowed to our love. The night unfolded slowly, like a long-forgotten melody. We kissed until our lips tingled, whispered secrets into the darkness, and curled into each other's arms. Every caress, every sigh, every shared breath felt like proof that love doesn't fade with age, it deepens. Lying there, I realized something profound. I no longer felt retired, or old, or forgotten. The loneliness that once gnawed at me was gone. In its place was a burning warmth, a steady flame that made me feel more alive than I ever had in my youth. She was more than a companion. She was my renewal. As dawn crept through the curtains, painting her face in soft golden light, I held her tighter, not wanting the night to end. She stirred in her sleep, her lips parting slightly, her hand gripping mine even in dreams. And I thought, this is what I was waiting for. Not a career, not fleeting romances, but her. When she woke, her eyes met mine, and she smiled sleepily. "Why are you staring at me like that?" "Because," I whispered, kissing her forehead, "I want to spend the rest of my life making sure you know how loved you are." Her eyes welled with tears, and she cupped my face with both hands. "No one has ever said that to me before." I kissed her then, deeply, pouring every unspoken promise into that moment. I would cherish her. I would care for her tired hands, her weary heart, her laughter, her tears. I would give her the home she never thought she could have. That night, as we curled together once more, I whispered my vow into the quiet. "You are my forever. Every night, every day, I will love you." And as her head rested against my chest, her breath steady and calm, I felt an overwhelming peace. My retirement was not the end of my story. It was the beginning of the greatest chapter of my life. I retired from the office, but I entered the greatest job of my life. Loving her every night, every day, forever.